can you best support the autistic people in your life? Stick around to find out. Hi friends, my name is Claire and this is my channel, Woodshed Theory. Here, I make content about what it is like to live as an adult on the autism spectrum and whatever else feels good to me. So if that sounds good to you, or if you're feeling particularly gracious today, and I hope that you are, please go ahead and click the subscribe button. Ring the bell. I almost forgot to mention that I put out videos a few times a week, so click the like and the share. Help me get to 10K before the end of the year. We're gonna do it. We're only 600 away. A very popular sentiment in the autistic community is, I'm autistic, now what? And that's fair because many people are not diagnosed with autism until they're adults or later on in life. So it's a natural question to ask, what now? But a question that I don't hear considered as often is, my child, my spouse, my friend, my whoever is autistic. Now what? As many of you know, there are a large amount of neurodiverse people on the planet. Whether you think so or not, you have met a neurodiverse person. I mean, probably there's a 99.9% chance. And many of you who are watching might be thinking, I just want to know what to do now that I have that information about this person in my life. What do I need to do? What does it look like for me? Maybe because you love them or you like them, they're your friend, or you work with them. And as a good and caring person, you may be considering, what can I do to support this person who is a part of my life that I care about? And I just want to say, if that's you and that's why you're watching this video, thank you. Being diagnosed on the autism spectrum at no matter what age has its challenges. Autistic people are trying to figure themselves out and what works for them. But we also make a lot of accommodations for the neurotypical people in our life, the people who don't have autism. We don't communicate the same way that you might communicate. We don't consider the things that you might consider. And that isn't necessarily a problem, but there's an expectation that autistic people will change their behavior to fit in with neurotypicals, or that we will learn to not be autistic, which in any case is just masking our autistic traits. So the fact that you might look at the situation and say, what can I do now? What does this mean for me now to help bridge the gap between autistic, neurodiverse, and neurotypical? That's awesome. So thanks for being here. So here are 10 ways that you can help support the autistic people in your life. Number 1, your response to them sharing their autism diagnosis with you, or your knowledge of their autism diagnosis, it matters. It's possible that you have already messed it up. And you know what? That's okay. People make mistakes, and I find that usually in the end, the caring sentiment comes through. But yeah, your response when somebody says or discloses to you that they're on the autism spectrum, it really does matter to the person who's sharing it with you. Maybe to different levels or degrees, but there is some meaning there, especially because of bad past experiences by autistics of sharing that they are on the spectrum, or knowing what other people have been through and their experiences of sharing their autism with people. Disclosing at work and then being treated a lot differently. Disclosing to your family and being told that you're wrong. Disclosing to your friends and being told that it's not possible. That can really, how can I put it? Like, you're a snail coming out of the shell, and then you just like suck back up into your shell. Is that a weird way to put it? Probably, but I'm weird, so. I've made other videos before on how to respond to somebody when they're disclosing autism and also how not to respond to someone when they're disclosing their autism. But here I just wanted to say that your response means something. It will set the tone for your relationship moving forward. So even if you don't know what to say at the moment, even if you're just saying, okay, I'm hearing you, I need to think about this and process this, your response matters. Somebody will remember if they had a negative experience. There can be forgiveness in that, there can be healing from that. But if the experience is negative or dismissive from the get-go, that isn't a really great way to start this new open dialogue that you two have. 2, be patient with slower processing. I've also made videos about slower processing in autistic people. There are some things that autistic people process super quickly and that we see before neurotypical people. For example, many of us excel at pattern recognition, noticing details other people don't notice. But sometimes for autistic people, we struggle with auditory processing. We're still coming up with the answer and starting to talk as you're moving on in the conversation. So a great way to support the autistic people in your life is to understand that there might be an auditory processing delay. There might be a delay in processing our feelings, and we might just need time. We might need alone time. We might need a few extra seconds to get our minds around what you're saying, and being given that grace goes a really long way. 3, 2 things together. If you're making plans with an autistic person, make the plans early and also have a backup plan in place. Now, I won't say this is all autistic people because many people who are autistic also have ADHD and they like spontaneity. But in general, autistic people like to know what they're doing ahead of time so that they can mentally, emotionally, spiritually, whatever, prepare. Have you ever asked an autistic person to run an errand with you or go into town with you last minute and their response is no, and you know that they don't have anything else going on and you're thinking to yourself, why don't they want to spend time with me? That is not it at all. Just give them some extra time. Ask them a few days ahead of time. And if you ask them to do something spontaneous and they say no, please be understanding of that. We need more time to process what we're going to do and prepare for those things, get ready for our sensory needs. So sometimes, even if the person has nothing going on and you're like, well, of course they're going to want to go to dinner with me or go to the park or go on a hike, sometimes they're still going to say no because they can't handle it at that time. 4, please accept communication differences. So at its heart, being autistic is a communication difference. We communicate differently than neurotypicals. We're not doing it on purpose. We're not doing it to hurt your feelings. We're not doing it to be rude. Our brains just function differently. This includes things like struggling with eye contact or, as I mentioned before, slower processing. Maybe we're nonverbal. Maybe we have a different way that we like to communicate. For example, I think I communicate a lot better with people through text messaging and writing than I do verbally. Gives me a chance to think about what I'm going to say and feel comfortable with it. So accepting communication differences is so important. 5, consider the sensory needs of the autistic person that you're with and don't make them feel bad if they have different sensory needs than you. So if you're picking a place to spend time with this person, for example, a restaurant, you may want to schedule it during a time where there's not going to be a ton of noise. So maybe not going during the lunch or dinner rush. Or maybe you want to catch a movie, but during a time when there's not going to be as many people at the movie theater. Considering sensory needs is probably one of the most compassionate and kind things that you could do for a person who is on the autism spectrum. This could have to do with sounds, lighting, smells, foods, etc. But considering those needs is really helpful to us. 6, Stop infantilizing people who are on the autism spectrum. It's a big one, guys. This is a really big one. Did you know that people who are on the autism spectrum don't necessarily have a delay or a learning disorder? We literally just think different than you do. We process the world around us differently than you do. And that's not actually a problem, it's just a difference. Many times when you share an autism diagnosis with people, they immediately treat you differently. We can feel the shift. We can feel the shift in the vibe. So please do not talk to us like we are children if we're adults. I mean, if you're an autistic child, yeah. But if you're in your 30s, why are you talking to me like have the mental capacity for a 10-year-old? I don't need you to treat me like I'm a child. In fact, it's just going to frustrate me and fluster me. So please don't do that. Also, don't talk around autistic people. No matter who you are, you don't like it when people talk around you in a situation. So if you're making plans with a group and you want to consider something that may affect an autistic person, ask them directly in the conversation, as opposed to saying, well, we can't do that because Claire ... Or, well, what about Claire ... Ask Claire. Ask the person. Talk to them directly about their needs and their wants. Respect them in that way, just as you would want to be respected yourself. 7. Maybe I should have talked about this one earlier, but please, please, please take it upon yourself to educate yourself about autism. If you're new to the idea of autism, I'm guaranteeing you that probably the things that you know about autism are wrong. For example, we're all a little bit on the spectrum, etc. Take it upon yourself to read some articles about autism, to watch some YouTube videos about autism, to better understand the autistic people in your life. You may need to spend some time learning about the autistic people in your life and what they need. What is autism? What does it mean? How does it affect people? So that you can have more compassion, more understanding. These are things that are very important. Stop putting it all on the autistic person to make accommodations for you. We are expected to know how neurotypical people think and what they want and what they need, and to treat them in a certain way. If you care about somebody who's on the autism spectrum, do the same for them. Understand what they're going through by doing your own research. 8. Respect autistic people's boundaries. It is okay for autistic people to say no to something. It is also okay for autistic people to need to take a break, or to wear ear protection, or spend some time being nonverbal and not speaking to you. Boundaries are so important. I think that as a neurotypical person, you might understand this, how important boundaries are for your mental, emotional, whatever health. It's the same for people who are neurodiverse. Just because you think differently than a person with autism doesn't mean that you know better than them, or you know better than them how they need to be treated or they need to take care of themselves. So allow people who are on the autism spectrum to set boundaries that they feel comfortable with. 9. Be straightforward, and to the best of your ability, be honest. Be literal. One of the aspects of autism is that we don't have the same methods of communication that people who are not on the spectrum have. For example, we might not be reading your facial expressions while you speak. We're not picking up on social constructs that may be in play, social rules. We might not be picking up on your body language. We are only hearing the verbal aspect of your communication with us. So when I say be literal, be straightforward, be honest, I think a good way to put that is take it upon yourself to learn the language of autism. Sometimes you'll hear autistic people being referred to as rude or too straightforward or a straight shooter. That's because we're only communicating with our words and we're only taking people at their word. It can be difficult for us to ascertain whether or not the person who is speaking to us is being sincere or honest, because we're just assuming that you say what you mean and that there isn't a subtext going on in the background. We don't read the subtext. Now, as we learn to speak neurotypicalese better, we can get better at that. But being straightforward, saying what you mean, those are things that are so important to autistic people because we're not picking up on it on our own all the time. 10. There's no need to call out stimming behaviors, or any behaviors for that matter, that are different from societal norms that aren't actually that big of a deal. So if a person needs to be stimming during a meeting by doodling, drawing, tapping to be able to understand you better, or not giving you eye contact to be able to understand you better, don't call it out. Stimming is very important to processing our emotions and to regulate our sensory needs as autistic people. So if you're seeing an autistic person stim or do something that maybe you wouldn't do because you don't find it socially acceptable or the norm or cool or whatever, it is not your responsibility to call that out and embarrass them, especially as a late diagnosed person who might be exploring their stimming behaviors because they've repressed them for so long. It really sets us back for you to say, can you stop that? Or for example, when I get really excited, I jump up and down. And I know that not all adults do that. I know not all adults jump up and down when they get excited. But that is how I feel regulated. It's what my body feels like it needs to do, and that's fine. So don't be calling people out for doing what makes them feel comfortable if it's not actually bothering you. Now, of course, there are some exceptions. I won't get into them now, but in general, just let us stim, okay? Just let us do it. We're not neurotypical, we're not you. Just let us be who we are. All right, those are my 10 tips on how to support the autistic people in your life. Which ones did you find most helpful? Are there other tips that you can think of? Please share them in the comments. We would love to hear them. I hope that you have a wonderful day. Thank you again for being concerned about the autistic people in your life and how you can care for them and support them better. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.